Let's start off by grossly oversimplifying the situation with some irresponsible forecasts. Yes or no? Will the government shut down this week? And is the economy heading into a recession?
I would say no shutdown and yes, recession.
No shutdown. I'm still an optimist on that one. House Speaker Johnson seems to pull something, a magical unicorn out of Congress every time. Recession is a more interesting question. We're not in one now, but if you ask me on a scale of 1 to 10 how worried I am, a month ago I would have said 3, 4, hardly worried. Today I'd say that's a 7.
Wow.
All right. Well, I hate to make this in perfect agreement here because that means we're all going to be wrong. But I think, no, there won't be a shutdown because Republicans are perfect invertebrates and they will once again buckle. And yes, the recession is coming after, 50 months of straight job growth because our president has thrown one shock after another into this economy, and that's more than it can take. This is Impromptu from Washington Post Opinions, a show that brings you conversations about the news we can't stop thinking about, no matter how hard we try. I'm Dana Milbank, and this week we're turning to Congress, or as I call them, the Fools on the Hill, a branch of government that has seemed to be a passenger in President Trump's motorcade lately, along for the ride. But now Congress does actually need to pass a short-term spending bill, or the government will shut down by the weekend. We'll talk about how the Republicans are trying to get it done, and if this is a moment when the Democrats actually have any levers to pull. We'll also talk about the state of the economy, how it's responding to President Trump's wild gyrations on tariffs, and whether he's driving us into recession. I have two of my brainy colleagues here to talk through all this and more.
I'm Heather Long, an economic columnist at the Washington Post.
I'm James Hohmann, a member of the editorial board and a columnist.
Thanks for coming on the show today, guys. So let's start with what's going on in Congress. House Republicans are trying to push through a continuing resolution for the rest of this fiscal year that would keep government funding roughly where it is, with a few tweaks aimed at winning over the far right. Will Republicans, many of whom have for years said they would not vote for spending bills that hike the deficit without cutting spending, now vote unanimously to do exactly that?
I mean, it's really remarkable to have the House Freedom Caucus out there whipping for this spending bill that is literally identical. It's a continuing resolution to a spending package that they said was the most awful thing ever when it was Joe Biden. Mike Johnson put himself in this position because he wanted to stay on as speaker. He did this short-term continuing resolution to kick the can from December to March, and now they want to kick the can into September. And it really is remarkable to watch these so-called principled fiscal conservatives show themselves to be anything but. It's amazing how many immediately fall in line, and it really is a testament to how Donald Trump has taken full control of the Republican Party. I've actually thought the most interesting thing at the end of the joint address last week was when Trump was walking up the aisle afterwards, shaking hands, and there were all these random backbench House Republicans who were thanking Trump for the recent call or the recent invitation to the White House. And these are not high-profile big people. And to me, it was sort of evidence that unlike 8 years ago, Trump actually is playing the inside game better. He's working these Republicans. He's buttering them up in some cases, using carrots, using sticks, but he's getting them to pass his agenda.
I'll just add, I think one of the scary parts going forward, you think, why would Republicans do this, particularly, say, House Freedom Caucus? And that's because a continuing resolution doesn't list all the details of the spending. It basically hands the power over to the president, in this case, the president and the Elon Musk Department of Government Efficiency team. And so in a twisted way, if you're thinking that you want certain spending cuts to happen, this is a weird way to do it. I mean, this is a way to give the president the authority to take money away from areas Republicans don't like and put it towards potentially areas that they do. And so that's what I think is the reason that's really getting people on board here. And that could mean a lot more change than a lot of people are realizing when you're thinking, oh, it's a continuing resolution, it's the status quo for the next 6 months. No, that is not really what's going to happen.
Right, because they're saying the quiet part out loud. They're just saying, just pass this and we'll impound the funding. It may be illegal, but we'll just go ahead and do it and spend it on the programs we want and not spend it on the programs that we don't want, which, of course, is exactly why Democrats are saying, well, why the hell should we vote for this thing? I mean, you're just going to do what you want to do anyway. You're shutting down our programs anyway. So, what's their incentive to vote to keep the government open? And that gets us to this, perpetual question we seem to be asking every week now. What can the Democrats do, if anything? Do they have any power at all, or are they just supposed to stand up and heckle and shake their walking sticks?
What we're seeing is a usurpation of the power of the purse. If this plays out as we expect it will with impoundment, and you had Russ Vought, who's been out there saying we don't have to comply with congressional appropriations. He's on the Hill meeting with House Republicans, helping twist the arms. It's such a no-win situation for Democrats because they don't want to get blamed for shutting down the government. They don't want to shut down the government. They don't want to empower Elon and company. But having a shutdown in some ways also would, because the Musk and Russ Vought would get to decide who's essential and what programs are essential and what's not. So it's not all sort of upside by holding out. So it is this damned if they do, damned if they don't. And I think a lot of Democrats are now in the vote no, hope yes sort of state of mind, where Rand Paul says he's going to vote no on the Senate floor on the CR. So that means 8 Senate Democrats would need to vote yes, but the rest could vote no. And I think they'll be able to get 8 who just are scared of a government shutdown, scared of getting blamed for it in battleground states. But ultimately, I think Democrats are divided over what to do because they realize that it's picking between 2 sucky options.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not a Senate Democratic leader right now. It's, as James was saying, a really no-win situation. It seems like the groundwork is laid for some sort of ultimate passage. And, the ideal strategy for Dems is what they're trying to do behind the scenes, which is force it to be maybe a 1-month CR or to shorter CR than going all the way to September in order to keep the chaos going. And honestly, as an economics person expert on this podcast, I'll just say the best strategy appears to be let Trump be Trump. I mean, this is chaos, and people are not happy that the stock market is falling. Small businesses sentiment just came out. That's been tanking, one of the worst drops in years. We just saw consumer sentiment drop. People are panicking, and it's not just Democrats panicking. And so if I were the Democrats, I'd almost pass this and just say, fine, you own it. You own it.
It is such a tough call, and I'm generally of the burn it all down camp here, because I feel like there's no way to negotiate with Trump, that the whole thing is not on the level. But I think that's really compelling what you said there, Heather, is, just like step out of the way. They are digging themselves into a deeper hole every day. Don't give them any excuse to blame Democrats for it, but not for the first time. I'm glad I'm not Chuck Schumer.
And fight them on, the reconciliation bills. Obviously, they can do a lot of gamesmanship. Heather explained correctly why a CR has a lot of downsides. Yeah. But the big, really budget-busting, debt-growing bills, the tax cuts that they want to push through, that is where, if Democrats stay united, even though they only need a simple majority in the Senate, there is a real chance that those packages crash and burn under their own weight.
Absolutely.
Even as Trump keeps twisting arms. I think those are the fights worth having.
Right. They can dig their own graves as they eliminate Medicaid. All right. We're going to turn to the economy and what all this flip-flopping on tariffs and trade wars will mean for all of us. But first, we have to take a quick break. Welcome back. I'm Dana Milbank, and this is Impromptu. So I want to talk about the economy. Trump has announced tariffs on our neighbors and then partially taken them back, several times now. He's still promising more and more are coming. The latest metal tariffs of 50% on Canada. Why is Trump sticking with his love of tariffs, even as the markets crash around us? Inform me, Heather.
It's the multi-trillion-dollar question. The best that I can figure it out, having listened to countless hours of some real interesting economic nonsense from various White House advisors lately, is three things. Trump truly believes, or at least somebody in the White House truly believes, that tariffs are the way to bring back manufacturing jobs. This has been a heavy debate in the United States for the last 10 years. Most people disagree with him and say that that is not going to happen no matter how high these tariffs are, but he seems convinced that this is this case. Number two, as we were just talking about, he needs money. He needs money for these tax cuts he wants to extend at the end of the year, for the various other programs he wants to do, so maybe spending more on defense. And he's convinced that this is a way to raise a lot of money. And he keeps lying to the American people by saying that China or Canada or Europe or India or whomever are going to pay these tariffs when the vast majority of them will be paid for by the American people. And number three is more the smaller government argument, the classic Republican argument. I think this is more of Elon Musk and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's crusade. They're the ones who talk mostly about the need to detox the government and the economy from relying too much on the government. But you put all three of those together, and it's this belief that a combination of these tariffs and these potentially huge government reductions are going to create some sort of stronger private sector. But even saying that out loud just makes me want to scream, because on the one hand, they need the private sector to grow more. And on the other hand, small businesses, big businesses are freaking out right now. They don't want to invest. They don't want to hire in a world where we're all laughing about it, but every hour the messaging changes. Every hour the policies change. That is not an environment that's going to create a sustainable economy.
Mm-hmm. After the election and the run-up to the inauguration, I heard business executives all the time use the term animal spirits. The animal spirits have been unleashed. And now those same executives are freaking out. And obviously all the market gains have been erased and more. But the uncertainty really is chilling investment and consumer confidence. And it's hard to see what Trump could possibly do at this point, short of saying no more tariffs, to make people feel some degree of confidence.
Or even provide an off-ramp. I think what's really changed in the past week, when we've seen the big stock market sell-off, what's changed is partly Wall Street now believes a recession is a possibility, but it's partly nobody can see a clear way to de-escalate, to do what James just said. I mean, it's, that's what, we're supposedly doing this trade war with Mexico and Canada over border and fentanyl. But then suddenly we want to renegotiate the border with Canada. Suddenly we think Canada, has unfair taxes or unfair tariffs on us, and it's about reciprocity. Suddenly it's about, do we make Canada the 51st state? And so, that's what I think, if you're someone who believes this is all about making a deal, or even just having a really nice photo op in the White House for Trump to claim some win, the rationale literally doesn't make sense and changes constantly.
Right. If I could add on the contradiction in terms, obviously less than 1% of the fentanyl that was intercepted last year was from Canada. And so Trump is saying, Canada needs to do more on fentanyl. He's using these national security justifications to do what he wants to do to change the nature of the American economy. But even today, announcing the 50% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum, if you actually wanted to create more domestic manufacturing, making the inputs cost 50% more is going to hurt, not help. I on the escalation ladder, we're not the only players here. Canada's Labour Party elected a new leader to replace Justin Trudeau on Sunday, Mark Carney. He really amped up Canadian rhetoric in his speech on Sunday night at the Liberal Party conference. And he was saying, the Americans want to annex us. The Americans want to take our water, our food. They want to destroy us. We're going to fight back. And he used a lot of very strong rhetoric. And you obviously have Canadians now drinking Canadianos instead of Americanos and dumping bourbon. It is sort of hard to de-escalate when, for domestic political purposes, Carney is picking this fight with Trump, showing that he's strong. He has to call an election sometime between now and October. And the liberals were down 20 points in the polls. Now they're tied with the conservatives. And so he's using this rhetoric, but that makes it all the harder to find a solution. And then Trump keeps amping it up and ratcheting it up. And it's hard to watch because neither country will be better off. This will push both countries into recession.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it seems to me that if, even if Trump today said, all right, I was wrong, I'm not doing any more tariffs, which we all know would never happen in a million years, I don't see how you put the cat back in the bag, because basically what he's done is blow up the whole era of free trade deals. You know, he is declaring trade wars on people he himself has negotiated trade deals with. So who in their right mind would ever reach a trade deal again with the United States? So I think this has basically changed the whole era of economics that is now well beyond any of our power to change.
And what's particularly frustrating is I think there's a lot of agreement among Republicans and Democrats that something needed to change with China. And if President Trump had sort of continued his first term approach of really trying to force and isolate the Chinese and use our relationships with Europe and with Canada and with others to almost gang up on China, I think he would have had a lot of support and would have looked pretty smart. But instead, he's turning around and doing these incredibly harsh penalties on people who obviously are our allies, our friends, and who share our interests in a lot of ways.
Now, for humanitarian reasons, let us pause and shed a tear for Elon Musk, who has lost tens of billions of dollars at Tesla and in the market. But, beyond that, what about ordinary Americans? Are they feeling the effects of this yet? And if not, when and how will they?
It's mild effects so far. So you can see a little bit of avocado prices rising, coffee prices were already rising. There's been several electric utilities, particularly ones that border Canada, that have sent out notices and warnings that electricity costs will be going up soon due to some of the trade war impacts. So you're starting to see kind of around the edges a little bit what's going on. Almost every earnings call going on Wall Street right now, you have the Targets of the world warning that prices are going to rise soon. I was just at Costco this week and didn't notice it too much, but it certainly feels like it's coming. But I think the bigger one is this fear, this anxiety is back. So even though, let's say, we don't know the exact number, but let's say 200,000 federal jobs have been cut. Even if you don't work at the federal government, there's huge anxiety right now that people are going to lose their jobs, even if they work in a daycare or a retailer or a manufacturer. Similarly, I was really struck by the latest data showing when people are asked, do you think you will financially be better off a year from now? One of the biggest declines in people saying, no, I don't think I will be, was just registered in one of the New York Federal Reserve surveys that came out this week. And that just shows you when people start to see and believe that they're either going to lose their job or they're going to be financially worse off a year from now, what do logical people do? They stop spending, right? They cut back. They're not going to go on Disney vacation. They're not going to go out for their weekly meal as a family at the pizza place. They're going to eat the frozen pizza at home. And that starts to have those ripple effects that people do start to notice and see.
So a recession becomes inevitable when you head down that road.
Well, it certainly becomes a heck of a lot likely. Yeah. I mean, even the Trump administration is saying, it'll probably be a slowdown in the first quarter. A technical recession, you need 2 quarters of negative growth. So I don't know if we'll get negative in this first quarter, but again, why are we testing this? Why are we wanting to do this?
And if I could add, one of the things Kevin Hassett, one of the president's economic advisors, said on CNBC yesterday was, there might be a slowdown in the first quarter, but the second quarter is going to boom because of the tax cuts. I think that reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of what these tax cuts do. People are not choosing to hold onto their money or to not make investments because of the tax rate. They're not making investments because of the uncertainty and the added costs and the chaos, the roller coaster. So I don't think that cutting the corporate tax rate is going to cause more investment. And that's one of the reasons I think we are headed into this inevitable slide. And how long it lasts is an open question.
That's a good point. I'll just put a footnote on that part of these tax cuts are not new tax cuts. They're extending what's already there. So that's why what James was saying, it doesn't feel fresh to people. It doesn't feel like I suddenly have a ton more money in my pocket. And even if they do lower the corporate rate, it's not going to be that gigantic lowering, from 35% down to 21 that we saw in 2017, 2018. We're talking about maybe we go from 21% to 18. And you're right, James, that's a marginal difference. It's not a game-changing difference.
All right. I am now regretting my decision not to pull more of my 401k out of stocks a few weeks ago. So thanks for that, guys. Now I just strap in and actually don't pay any attention to my 401k for the next couple of years.
There are some winners because I saw this amazing statistic yesterday. Because of everything that's going on with Ukraine and Europe, European-based defense companies are up 60% year to date, which is just breathtaking. But it's because there's this belief that these European defense companies are going to have to fill the void left by the vacuum created by the US.
Well, that's great, James, but I've missed that boom too. So I'm just SOL, as they say. And with that, we've got to wrap this up. Thank you both for joining this episode of Impromptu.
Thanks, Dana. Stay invested.
Stay long.
This episode was produced by Hadley Robinson and Regina DeHeer, edited by Chris Sulentrop and Allison Michaels, and mixed by Sam Baer. Special thanks to Mili Mitra and Deirdre Byrne. Thanks for listening to Impromptu. Please let us know what you thought about this conversation. Send an email to impromptu@washpost.com. And remember to tune in later this week to the Friday edition of Impromptu, where you can hear my colleagues Drew Goins and Molly Roberts and others talk about topics other than politics.